Ma'am, before we close this account, I need to ask you something. The bank manager's voice sounded strange. Not nervous, not confused, afraid. I looked up from my phone and smiled politely. Sure. What is it? He slowly turned his monitor toward me. Have you checked the balance of this account recently? I almost laughed. The account was an old savings account, my late husband, and I had opened years ago. There couldn't have been more than a few $100s inside. I looked at the screen, then everything around me disappeared. 27,418,631.94. $27 million. I blinked, looked again. Still there. $27 million. For a second, I honestly thought I was having a stroke. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 54 years old. And until that moment, I believed I knew everything about my husband. I was wrong. Very wrong. Because, even though Richard Mitchell had been dead for more than a year, his biggest secret was still alive. And somehow, it was sitting inside my bank account. 14 months earlier, my husband had died from a sudden heart attack. No warning, no second chance. 1 minute he was making coffee, the next minute he was gone. 26 years of marriage ended in less than 60 seconds. People always ask whether grief gets easier. It doesn't. You simply learn how to carry it. Some days you carry it well, other days it crushes you. I was still learning. That's why I came to the bank. I wanted to close the final account that still had Richard's name attached to mine. I wanted one less reminder, one less wound. Instead, I discovered $27 million. The bank manager introduced himself as Mr. Hayes. He closed his office door. That immediately made me uncomfortable. People only close doors for bad news. Or dangerous news. Mrs. Mitchell, he said carefully, according to our records, this account has received significant deposits over the last 3 years. My heart skipped. What kind of deposits? He hesitated. The kind that attract attention. I stared at him. What does that even mean? I'm not authorized to discuss details without additional verification. Then he leaned forward. If I were you, he paused. I'd speak to an attorney before touching a single dollar. That sentence followed me all the way home. I sat in my driveway for almost 20 minutes. The house looked exactly the same mailbox, the same porch, the same curtains. Yet somehow everything had changed, because one question kept repeating inside my head. Who does $27 million belong to? And why had my husband never mentioned it? That night I couldn't sleep. At 2:17 a.m. I opened my laptop. The account was there. The money was there. Every dollar. I started scrolling through transaction records. Large deposits, hundreds of thousands at a time. Sometimes millions, always from the same source. Backstone Ridge Holdings. I had never heard that name before. Not once. Not in 26 years. Not during dinner. Not during vacations. Not during arguments. Never. Yet somehow, they had deposited millions into our account. The next morning I began digging company records, business databases, public filings, anything. Most searches led nowhere, almost like someone wanted the company to remain invisible. But after hours of searching, I found something. One name, one single name. A managing partner. Victor Kane. The moment I saw it, my stomach dropped. I knew Victor. Everyone who knew Richard knew Victor. They had been best friends since college. Victor had been best man at our wedding. Then suddenly, years ago, he disappeared from our lives. Richard always claimed they'd had a business disagreement. I never questioned it. Now, I wished I had. Because somehow, Victor Kane was connected to $27 million. And my dead husband. 3 days later, I hired an attorney, Amelia Brooks, the kind of lawyer who made powerful people uncomfortable. She listened to everything, the bank, the account, the deposits. Victor Kane. When I finished talking, she looked directly at me. Sarah. Her tone was serious. Whatever this is, it's bigger than you think. Then she opened a legal pad and wrote one sentence. Follow the money. At that moment, I thought we were investigating a financial mystery. I had no idea we were about to uncover a criminal empire, and I definitely had no idea that someone was already watching me. That evening, I returned home. A dark SUV sat across the street, engine running, lights off. The driver never got out, never looked away from my house. I watched from behind my curtains, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Then suddenly the SUV drove away. My phone rang immediately. Number, I answered. No one spoke. Only breathing, slow, deliberate, then a man's voice whispered, "Stop looking into the account." The line went dead, and for the first time since finding the money, I realized this wasn't just about secrets. It was about danger, and someone didn't want me finding the truth. The voice on the phone spoke only 6 words. "Stop looking into the account." Then the line went dead. I stood frozen in my kitchen. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. Most threats are frightening because of what they say. This one was frightening because of what it didn't say. The caller never introduced himself, never mentioned money, never mentioned Victor Kane, yet somehow he knew exactly what I was investigating. That meant one thing: someone was watching me. The next morning I called Amelia Brooks. She didn't sound surprised. "Document everything," she said. "The vehicle, the phone call, the time. You think this is serious?" "I think people don't threaten strangers over ordinary bank accounts." That wasn't exactly comforting. A week later, Amelia introduced me to a forensic investigator. His name was Daniel Cross, former federal financial crimes investigator. Quiet, sharp, the type of man who noticed details other people missed. I handed him everything: bank records, company names, stock and ration histories, Victor Kane's information. Daniel studied the documents for almost an hour without speaking. Finally, he looked up. "Mrs. Mitchell," his voice was calm. "How much did your husband tell you about his business?" "Almost everything." Daniel gave me a look. "No." He slid a document across the table. "Apparently he didn't." The file contained financial transfers, hundreds of them, millions moving through shell companies, fake consulting agreements, accounts, and invoices. The deeper Daniel dug, the uglier it became. Blackstone Ridge Holdings wasn't a normal company. It was a laundering machine. Money entered through one door, came out somewhere else completely clean, and according to the records, my husband had been involved for years. I couldn't breathe. "No," I whispered. "There must be a mistake." Daniel's expression didn't change. "I wish there was." For 26 years I believed Richard was honest, not perfect, but honest. Now every memory felt different. Every late-night business trip, every unexplained phone call, every sudden meeting, every missing weekend, pieces that never fit before, were suddenly forming a picture. And I hated the picture. Then Daniel showed me something worse: a series of encrypted messages recovered from financial servers. Most were between Victor Kane and unknown associates, but several contained Richard's name. One message read, "Richard is getting nervous." Another said, "If he backs out now, we all go down." My stomach twisted. Richard wanted out. At some point, he had tried to leave. That night I sat alone in my living room. Rain tapped against the windows. The house felt different now, like a place filled with evidence, not memories. I found myself staring at old photographs, family, vacations, birthdays, anniversaries. I searched Richard's face, looking for signs. Any sign. Had he been lying every day? Or had he become trapped in something he couldn't escape? I didn't know. But one thing was becoming clear. Victor Kane wasn't afraid of losing money. He was afraid of losing secrets. 3 days later, Daniel called unexpectedly. His voice sounded urgent. "We need to meet, now." We met in Amelia's office. Daniel placed another folder on the table. This one was much thinner, but far more dangerous. Inside were property records, private travel logs, financial connections, and one photograph. The moment I saw it, my blood ran cold. Victor Kane, standing beside Richard. Taken only 4 months before Richard died. 4 months. Not 15 years ago, not after some business disagreement. 4 months before his death. My husband had lied. They never stopped seeing each other. Not once. I felt sick. Richard told me they hadn't spoken in years. Daniel nodded. That wasn't true. Amelia leaned forward. Sarah, there is something else. She hesitated. And for the first time since meeting her, she looked genuinely concerned. What? Daniel opened another document. It appears your husband's life insurance policy was increased dramatically 6 months before his death. I stared at him. So? So people don't usually increase coverage by several $1 million without a reason. Silence filled the room. Nobody wanted to say the question aloud, because once spoken, it couldn't be taken back. Finally, Amelia said it. Are we absolutely certain Richard died naturally? The room went silent. Every sound disappeared. My pulse thundered inside my ears, because suddenly, for the first time, I wasn't just questioning my husband's life, I was questioning his death. That evening I drove home in darkness. Halfway there, I noticed headlights behind me, the same vehicle, black SUV, keeping distance, following every turn. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. Left turn, it followed. Right turn, it followed. Another turn, still there. I called Amelia immediately. I'm being followed. Her voice became serious. Drive to the nearest police station. The SUV remained behind me for another 5 minutes. Then suddenly, it disappeared, gone like it had never existed. I barely slept. At 3:14 a.m., my security camera notification woke me. Movement detected. Front porch. I opened the live feed. No body was there. Only a small envelope, sitting directly in front of my door. I waited until sunrise. Then opened it. Inside was a single photograph. Nothing else. No note, no message, just a photograph. The picture showed Richard, Victor Kane, and a third man I had never seen before. All three were standing beside a private aircraft, longing, smiling, celebrating something. On the back of the photo, someone had written 4 words. Ask about the crash! My hands started shaking. Because, according to official records, that third man had died 3 years earlier, in a mysterious private plane crash. A crash connected to millions of missing dollars, and somehow, my husband had been standing beside him days before it happened. Ask about the crash. Those 4 words refused to leave my mind. I must have read them 100 times, maybe more. The photograph sat on my kitchen table, while dawn slowly filled the room. Richard, Victor Kane, and a man who was officially dead, a man who had supposedly died in a private aircraft crash 3 years earlier. Yet there he was, alive, smiling, standing beside my husband. Something was terribly wrong. At 8 o'clock that morning, I was sitting in Amelia Brooks' office. She studied the photograph carefully, then handed it to Daniel Cross. Neither looked happy. Daniel immediately recognized the third man. His name was Nathan Mercer, a commercial developer, one of the original investors connected to Blackstone Ridge Holdings. Officially, Nathan died when his private jet crashed shortly after takeoff near Charleston. Case closed. End of story. At least that's what everyone believed. Until now. Who sent this? Amelia asked. I don't know. Security cameras. I nodded. No face visible. Daniel leaned back. Then whoever sent it wanted to help. Or wanted to manipulate us. Both possibilities were terrifying. 3 days later, Daniel uncovered something unexpected. The aircraft crash report. At first glance, everything looked normal. Pilot error. Bad weather. Mechanical failure. Case closed. But Daniel noticed something strange. No body had ever been positively identified. The wreckage burned too badly. Authorities relied primarily on flight records. Dental records were inconclusive. DNA testing had never been completed. The investigation ended quickly. Too quickly. The room went silent. Amelia finally spoke. You're saying Nathan Mercer may never have been on that plane? Daniel nodded. That's exactly what I'm saying. For a moment nobody spoke, because if Nathan Mercer wasn't dead, then someone had staged his disappearance. And if someone could fake a death, what else were they capable of? The answer arrived sooner than expected. 2 weeks later, federal agents contacted Amelia. The IRS investigation had expanded. Several hidden accounts had been uncovered overseas, millions of dollars, shell companies, identities, and one name appeared repeatedly: Victor Kane. The government moved quickly. Meech warrants, OSIC seizures, financial freezes. Suddenly people who had remained silent for years started talking. Former employees, accountants, lawyers, business partners. Everyone wanted protection. Everyone wanted a deal. And every new statement pointed toward the same conclusion. Victor Kane wasn't simply involved. He was running everything. Then came the discovery that changed the entire case. Daniel called late one evening. His voice sounded different, excited. "Sarah, I think we found Richard's insurance files." I felt my stomach tighten. "What about them?" "You're going to want to sit down." I sat, then listened. According to records recovered from Victor's financial network, Richard had been preparing to cooperate with investigators. Months before his death, he had become frightened, paranoid, nervous. He wanted out. More importantly, he wanted protection. And that life insurance increase? It wasn't about money. It was about fear. Richard believed something might happen to him. For a long time, I couldn't speak. I simply stared out the window, watching darkness settle over the neighborhood, because suddenly everything looked different. Again, Richard wasn't innocent. Far from it. But maybe he wasn't entirely the villain either. Maybe he had realized too late what he'd become part of. Maybe he'd tried to escape. Maybe he simply ran out of time. Federal prosecutors built their case over the next several months. Every week, new evidence appeared. Every week, Victor Kane's position became worse. Then came the final blow. A former executive agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. The testimony destroyed everything: accurate ledgers, high payments, witness intimidation, fraud, money laundering, tax crimes, years of criminal activity, all documented, all traceable, all connected to Victor Kane. The arrest happened early on a Thursday morning. News helicopters covered it live. Victor Kane was escorted from his mansion in handcuffs. No smile, no confidence, no expensive suit could save him now. The man who had spent years controlling everyone around him had finally lost control. A few weeks later, prosecutors informed Amelia that I would not face any charges, none, Zell. Their investigation confirmed what I'd said from the beginning. I didn't know. I never participated. I never benefited knowingly. I was a victim, not an accomplice. When Amelia told me officially, I cried not because of the money, not because of the victory, but because for the first time in nearly 2 years, I could finally breathe. The financial settlement took months. Millions were seized. Millions were returned. Millions disappeared into legal proceedings. By the end of it all, approximately $16 million legally remained mine. More money than I could ever spend. More money than I ever wanted. And yet, it came wrapped in grief. People imagine wealth solves everything. It doesn't. Money cannot answer questions. Money cannot repair trust. Money cannot bring someone back. But money can create choices. And after years of living inside someone else's decisions, I finally had my own. I left my job, not immediately. I finished properly, said goodbye properly. Then I walked away. I traveled, read books, volunteered, started living again, not surviving. Living, there is a difference, a very important difference. 1 year later, I visited Portugal, a place I had always wanted to see. Richard always postponed the trip. There was always another meeting, another project, another excuse. This time, nobody could stop me. I sat beside the water in Lisbon one evening, watching the sunset, listening to strangers laugh, feeling completely anonymous, completely free. And for the first time since the bank manager showed me that impossible balance, I felt peace. Real peace. Victor Kane eventually accepted a plea agreement. Years in federal prison, millions in forfeitures. Everything he spent decades building collapsed, not because of one mistake, but because of thousands of them. One decision at a time, one lie at a time, one secret at a time. As for me, I stopped asking why this happened. Eventually, I learned a better question: what will I do now? Because the future isn't built from what happens to us. It's built from what we choose afterward. And that's exactly what I chose. A new home, a new life, a new beginning. Sometimes I still think about that morning at the bank, the ordinary Tuesday that changed everything. I walked in, expecting to close an account with a few $100s. Instead, I uncovered $27 million, a criminal empire, a dead husband's secret life, and the truth about the people I trusted most. But if there's one thing this story taught me, it's this: the truth may arrive late, it may hurt, it may destroy the life you thought you had, but eventually, the truth sets you free. The end.